Hi, well today a great one for you if you're looking for new ideas to build stronger teams who actually execute on strategy. Chris McChesney is the Global Practice Leader for Franklin Covey, and he's the co-author of the 4 Disciplines of Execution, and he's also a very in-demand speaker and workshop facilitator, and he's coming out for the Growth Faculty next month for a full-day workshop, so we're going to hear more about that too. And Chris, welcome to the Growth Faculty. Thanks very much for being with us again today.
Thanks, Christine. Great to be with you again.
So we know that failing to execute is a real pain point for our business community. What are the main blockages do you see to teams executing on strategy?
The big one, and it's interesting because not everybody sees it right away, but it's everything you have to do to maintain the existing operation, the day job. Human beings are wired to respond to urgency over things that are important or even strategic. And so everything that has to be done every single day just to keep the operation going for everyone, for every industry, anywhere, seems to be the number one. Now, there's a whole bunch of other little things that sort of add on to that, but this intense amount of energy required to maintain the day job, the whirlwind, is the number one impediment to strategic execution.
Now, I said that this was a big pain point for our business community. How widespread do you think failing to execute is for the wider community? I mean, really for the worldwide business community?
Every continent, and Franklin Covey's got offices everywhere. There's literally a handful of countries in the world where we don't have offices. This is an issue everywhere. And not only is it an issue, it's the kind of issue leaders don't like to admit they have. It feels like it should be table stakes. Leaders feel like, I should be able to do this. You know, these people work for me. So not only is it a frustrating issue, but it's the type of problem people are not comfortable acknowledging, and that they're not comfortable having.
So let's go back to what you were saying was the main blockage, and that is this whirlwind of activity that happens around us. And you do call it the whirlwind. Can you give us a bit more of an indication about what that is, what's coming into play there, and what we can do about it? What are some practical things we can do about ignoring that whirlwind or dealing with that whirlwind while we're getting on and executing on some great ideas we've had?
I think the first thing for leaders to realize is that with your strategy, you're never painting on a blank canvas. You don't have 100% of these people's minds. They might love you. They might love working for you. They might really want to give you, and then as soon as they're out of your presence, everything else is acting on them. And to recognize that a leader has a small amount of discretionary energy that can be stolen away from the whirlwind, or another thing that you might call it life support. And just to have that mindset right up front really starts the whole conversation. So the conversation around strategy, the conversation around execution is, where are we going to spend? How can we focus our discretionary energy and pulling energy away from the day job when everybody is wired in the moment to do something urgent, right? Having the discipline around, how to focus that, how to harness that, how to maintain that, that is the conversation of execution.
So of course the book is called, and the whole methodology is called, the 4 Disciplines of Execution. What are those 4 disciplines, and how can you make it really tangible for us in terms of what we can do to make those 4 disciplines apply to our own business?
The problem that the 4 Disciplines of Execution solve is how to execute on a critical priority in the face of that 100-mile-an-hour whirlwind. When you talk to leaders about this, everybody, not only does everybody have one of these whirlwinds, they like to compete over whose is worse. They like to tell you theirs is you've never had to run a hospital. You have no idea the daily miracle we pull up. Like they like to compete. Can you, right, execute in the face of that? The trick with execution is not executing a goal. It's, can you execute that goal in the middle of that 100-mile-an-hour whirlwind? And so the disciplines, and we chose that word very carefully, the disciplines, and very quickly, the first one is around focus. And what does that really require? And it's different for an organization than it is for a team. And how do we really translate that philosophy, that strategic intent, into a tangible target? And the second discipline is on lead measures. How can we put energy against very specific metrics that are predictive of that outcome? And that really creates disciplines 1 and 2 create the strategic bet. Discipline 3 is how you scoreboard it. Human beings have to see it. It's got to be real to them. And what we've learned is the more it sort of feels a little like a game, the more you get, the more buy-in, the more energy. And the fourth discipline is a cadence of accountability. How do we, to coin a term, how do we continue to put force against leverage, right? Because our natural intuition is always going to want to take us back to the day job. How can we maintain that force against the leverage of those lead measures, right, long enough to have the breakthrough? And really, in totality, the whole thing, and we didn't know this at the beginning, but the whole thing revolves around human behavior. And because our natural tendencies in this topic, they're not our friends.
You know, it's really interesting. I've been to one of your workshops, and it's a very dry thing to listen to the theory around execution and the disciplines of execution. But the way that you pull it all together using case studies is terrific. And I'd love you to flesh it out for us and try and pull together a case study for us right now that you can do in a short time. I know we've got a short time, but a case study that would really illustrate how the 4 disciplines could be put into play with a wildly important goal of your making, which one you choose.
Yeah, and it's interesting what you said about, you would think this topic would be the driest topic that there is until you get into it and you realize it's really about extraordinary achievement, and it's really about human nature. I mean, there are so many human characteristics that work to your advantage if you can just get around a few that hold you back. And, you know, the one that there's a lot, as soon as you said case studies, like 100 of them, but I'll go to the result that I feel the best about being associated with. In the United States, in the state of Georgia, there was a 60% reduction in repeat cases of child abuse across the entire state of Georgia. And they went from one of the worst to leading the country in really controlling child abuse, which feels like that is and I'm deliberately picked a case study that seems just too big, too impossible, socially entrenched, cannot affect these things. And the leader, her name is BJ Walker, and she was really, and by the way, you always see really great leaders associated with these case studies. BJ had a knack for these disciplines right from the start, and she understood how to apply them. And as you got in, what you saw was that these social workers, thousands of social workers, their case logs were so big that and they were so worried about this problem that they would investigate anything, and that would only make the backlogs bigger and bigger, which meant the most critical problems were not being addressed. And so when they applied the 4 disciplines methodology to this, they really zeroed in on this lead measure of reducing the backlogs. And then they recognized there were very specific things that could be done. And if you could keep that in front of people, if you could really create a visible scoreboard, and if you could apply disciplined energy every single week to where these social workers could see that they were progressing and that it felt like a winnable game, the morale, the engagement shot up. And they went from having one of the biggest backlogs in the country to having no backlog at all. And the resulting consequence was they were on top of the most critical situations, and there was a huge reduction in human suffering as a result of that. And so even though, you know, sometimes in a situation like that, in a giant bureaucracy, you feel completely hopeless, sometimes there's great power in focusing on something as specific as a backlog and putting a disproportionate amount of energy, right, and concentrated focus on something that has real leverage. And so anyway, so I don't know how many people can relate to that, but I just like it because it's got such a human angle to it, and it felt so impossible in the beginning.
And I think it's really interesting to find out that in that case study that you use, of course, all the whirlwind of the day-to-day activity and all the new cases that were coming in didn't go away. So
That's right.
in some ways, you're actually teaching people how to execute as well as doing what they do every day. It's almost like an add-on rather than an instead of.
Yeah, that's such a nice point. One of the organizations that's very good at this methodology is Marriott. And the Marriott managed properties around the world apply this. And when they started 11 years ago, they're better at it today than they were 11 years ago. When they started, there was a really interesting quote from one of their leaders, Dave Grissom, who we quote in the book. And he said to the folks, if you want to keep your jobs at Marriott, it's kind of an interesting statement, to hear someone say something like that. He said, if you want to keep your jobs at Marriott, just take care of the day job. I'm thinking, where is he going with this? He said, seriously, just take care of the day job. You'll always have a place here at Marriott. Because we'd be crazy to let you go because the person that replaces you, maybe they don't take care of the day job. But we know, something, he's going to say something else. And then there was a pause. And then he said, but if you want to be promoted, bring me one. So just like you were saying, Christine, so table stakes, take care of the day job. All right, that's the 80% that has to be done to keep this place going. But in addition to that, bring me, and we call them a WIG or a wildly important goal. Bring me one. Bring me event satisfaction. Bring me arrival experience. Bring me everything in working order. Bring me some critical metric. Don't take credit for it after it happens, right? Call your shot up front and show me that as a leader, right, that you can not only take care of the day job, but that you can deliver on a specific strategic target. And it doesn't have to be everything. Just show me that you can do that. And this became really part of the promotion process. If you were a hotel manager and you applied to be a general manager, they wanted to know, all right, what did you target? Were you able to do it? And I just thought, I thought that was a good capture of what you just said. Yeah, you've got to be able to hold the process down, but you have to be able to deliver, right? On top of that, and because the disciplines are not a way to manage your day job, right? People know how to do that. It's how do I get that next critical thing that's got to happen, and I don't think it's going to happen. How do we get that done?
A lot of businesses would be pulling in lots of ideas from everywhere, and as you were saying, you have to focus on this one additional thing on top of your day job. Tell me a little bit about focus and what it means to have focus, why we would lose focus, and how we can improve our focus.
I might be as good a negative example of focus as walks this earth. I'm a raging example of hyperactivity, attention deficit disorder. People get that when they meet me. And I think I looked at this a little bit like Ritalin. And I needed that. And I don't think I'm alone. I think there's a lot of leaders that even if they don't have my hyperactivity, they have a lot of good ideas. And there's a lot of leaders that are very ambitious. And they're right. That's why we promote people. You're creative, you're ambitious. And so it's almost like the people we put in leadership positions are maybe a little more genetically prone to blow focus anyways, right? Which exacerbates the problem, right? And when we talk about focus, we're really talking about two things. The word kind of means two things, and we mean both of them, right? There's this one idea, right? Can we narrow the focus, right? In addition, we've got 10 metrics that we look at, but can we zero in on one that is really the critical gap that we have to close first? If you ever spend time with great operators, they do this naturally. They don't chase all the metrics. They'll maybe sustain them all, but they'll bring one down, right? And so that's the first aspect of focus. The second aspect of focus is like focusing a camera. I want to bring something into focus. And that's really a part of constructing the targets. When you zero in on that thing, when you narrow the focus on that thing, does it have a starting line? Does it have a finish line? Does it have a deadline? Because until it does, there's room for confusion and ambiguity, and getting really clear about when we describe a strategy. This is exactly what we're going to achieve by when. Here are the sub-targets in terms of what we're going to achieve by when. Can we translate that strategy into the fewest number of that's focus. and it's narrower and it's clearer.
You've got so many practical steps, and I know the workshop deals with so many of these. What are a couple you can share that you think would be particularly valuable for leaders who are watching and listening? The focus one was an excellent one. Have you got a couple more that you could share with us of that ilk?
Yeah, the one, thanks, Christine. The one in discipline 2 is really universal. You know, even if you're not applying the full methodology, the idea of a lead measure. First of all, people relate to it because, you know, everyone's at one point in their life has done something with weight loss, and they know about diet and exercise, and those are these influenceable metrics that have a predictable outcome of weight loss. Or they've been in school and they know that the outcome they want is better scores, better test scores, and they know that you know, maybe hours spent studying or project completion percentage, those things, right? Those measurables, the one leads to the other. And so taking an achievement down and into, right, a lag measure, the outcome, and a couple, no more than a few, leading measures. And the lead measure is something that I can both influence. Like, I can get my hands on weight loss. Like, that's something I can do. I can't do weight loss. I can get my hands on reducing calories. Right? I can do that. I can exercise. Like, I can get on that bike. I can, right? That's something I can do, and it has a predictable outcome. And that simple notion there creates a winnable game. And if leaders can do that, and if they can help frame that, as simple as that sounds, remember, everybody might know diet and exercise. The people that are losing weight, they know how many calories they've eaten and how many calories they've burned. And so getting that component down, that's a very usable tool that you almost always see associated with achievement.
So it's about moving the needle. So instead of just measuring how much weight you've lost, you measure what you're doing to lose that weight. So that's the difference between the lag and the lead. It's absolutely
it's not about knowing diet and knowing the principles of diet or exercise, but you actually know the data. That's when we see the results start to move, for a whole bunch of reasons.
When participants attend your workshop, what do they say that they feel is the aha moment that they come away with?
It's knowing how to use lead measures. It's really the most central. Even if the strategy is huge and you're in a multinational organization, it all goes down to human behavior, right? What's the definition of insanity? Keep doing the same things, expecting a different result, right? Until large strategies can be broken down into winnable games, there's all kinds of energy at the front line of the organization that people don't take care of. So I think the single biggest aha is knowing how to use lead measures in a practical way in different types of situations, projects, processes, those type of things.
And we're just going to finish with a question. Maddie has actually asked a question, or perhaps she's made more of a statement, where she said she's always been a bit confused about the difference between strategy and execution. And I imagine she wants us to ask you to explain that.
You know, this is a good, I'm probably the last person you want to ask this question to, because I think about it so much, right? And, but we like to talk about strategy and execution like, this is the plan, and then we all go execute the plan, and they're these two separate things. In reality, that's not true at all. It's really more like this. There's this targeting that goes on, and there's these choices that are made strategically, right? And then part of the execution is dialing those into critical metrics that can be achieved, and then sub metrics, and then taking it down at the team level. And there's choices, there are strategic. It's not like just the leaders of the organization determine strategy. Like every single case study that we show, you've got people right at the front line making strategic decisions within their wheelhouse. And you realize that there is this interesting dance between where an organization wants to go, and leaders have to be leaders. Leaders have to set direction. But the ingenious strategic decisions and execution of those decisions, that tends to go all the way down through the organization. And really difficult strategies require a pull more than a push. Certain strategies can be implemented just with direct leadership influence, right? Because I said so, and we're going to buy this, and we're going to open this number of outlets, and we're going to green light this capital expenditure, and I'm just going to use management muscle, and I'm going to change their comp plan. And there's certain easy strategies you can do with management muscle, and then there's stuff that doesn't respond to management muscle. And you either got people's hearts and minds into the game, or you're not going to win. And that is really where these disciplines come in, because they create a pull. They get people playing and defining the games that are necessary for the big. So to answer a question, it's a hard one. It's hard for us, but it's a good question because they're really interlocked. We think they are.
Terrific. Well, Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you as always. You're lots of fun, and I know that the workshop is also lots of fun, which may not have come across today, and that, you know, it is a bit of a gamification, the way that you teach what you teach. So thanks so much. Yeah, terrific. Well, we're looking forward to seeing you next month.
Thanks so much, Christine. Always a pleasure.
Terrific. And if you like what you've heard, of course, I did mention that workshop, and for participants who are watching or listening today, there is $100 off the workshop for you. Just go and enter the code 4DX. Well, I'm Christine Kenemonth. I have been speaking with Chris McChesney, who is the author of the 4 Disciplines of Execution. And don't forget, you do have to make that code go in if you do want that workshop discount by Friday midnight. So just double checking on that. This is the Growth Faculty. Thanks very much again for being with us, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.
The Growth Faculty is proud to present the 4 Disciplines of Execution. Turn strategy into action. Create an execution culture. Deliver on your most important strategic priorities. 4DX is an internationally proven formula used by Australia's most successful companies, including ANZ, Roads and Maritime Services, and Pfizer.
Because there's a little switch in people's heads called game on. There was a massive increase in accountability, and morale and engagement went up.
A one-day workshop presented by Wall Street Journal's #1 best-selling author, Chris McChesney. 4DX produces extraordinary results by tapping into the desire to win that exists in every individual. By providing real, practical game plans, Chris provides delegates with the ability to make immediate change within their organisation. As a delegate, you'll gain practical steps to focus your team's energy on a winnable game. Do more with less. Improve engagement and instill peer accountability.
What he delivers is not just an enthusiastic presentation, but he's actually changing your work culture as you sit there and listen.
He has just energised the room, and he's broken down something that's so complex into something so simple, and we want to bring them into our business.
The 4 Disciplines of Execution is a simple, proven formula that drives accountable execution and passion-driven commitment. Don't let your team miss out on this highly anticipated event. The 4 Disciplines of Execution, presented by Chris McChesney. Coming to Sydney on the 16th of September, Melbourne on the 18th, and Brisbane on the 20th of September. Book now.